Topics may be triggering for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, I'm Seth with Recovering with Friends, and I have a few new friend in here today with Candy and her nephew, Onyx. And then we have Lauren that was here to join us last week, and Kayleigh again. And tonight we're going to be talking about work and how that affects recovery. Lauren, you want to give us just a little quick story about yourself again?
So I'm almost 6 years clean. I will be October 29th of this year. I was incarcerated for a little while. I've kind of been on both sides of it. I've been clean for quite a while. I work, I go to college, I have a baby now. My life has changed a lot since I was using, and yeah, that's basically it.
So Candy, it's your first time with us. You want to just give us a little quick of how you ended up in
I just hit 5 years clean and sober in January. Life in general is really great with being able to fully function every day and be there for your children. And I also was incarcerated for a couple days and got arrested a few times and came close to losing my job a few times, but recovery's been great. And I'm not your typical 12-step. I found Jesus and was, he delivered me right there. So I'm one of the lucky ones not to have the go through the withdrawal part. And
I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's big with recovering with friends and us talking is there's no one way to recover.
Nope.
I mean, a lot of us have done 12 steps, but that's not the other way. And I think sitting right in your lap's a perfect example of what recovery is all about.
Absolutely.
And I mean, there's everybody sitting in here with us right now that is just in smiles looking at a baby. There'd be certain things, especially probably with people that aren't in it, would be going, oh, this is a baby in a room. And it's like we all look at it. We appreciate the small things in life.
Yeah. Because I can guarantee you that if I was how I was 5 years ago, I would not have this opportunity to have this little boy and all the other nieces and nephews that I get to have in my life.
We see most of the time when you show up here, you have a little one with you that helping out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Helping somebody out, and that's so cool. But yeah, so tonight we're talking about work and how it kind of affects recovery and the ins and outs of it. Like, Lauren, what do you do for work? I know you mentioned a little bit last time, but it kind of...
Yeah, I'm the assistant manager at Canton Variety, so I do a lot of cooking, just store stuff, convenience store stuff. But I also did the same kind of work before I got clean, before I was incarcerated. And I know that kind of culture can be really tough because a lot of people are drinking on the job in places like that. And, it can be a really dangerous culture for somebody that's trying to stay clean, and you can kind of feed off of the people that you work with, but then once you get into a good spot like I'm at with good support and stuff like that, it's totally different. It's just seeing both sides of it's really different.
Now, when after you got incarcerated and you went back to work and stuff, did you go right back into the food industry? Was there anything you did different, or?
I did, because it's hard to get work as a felon. It really is, and especially with nowadays where everything is online and you have to fill out a job application online, you can't just go in there and sell yourself to people anymore. If you automatically check that box that says you've been convicted of a crime, they're not supposed to discriminate, but they do, and it doesn't matter how good of a person you are. Sometimes a lot of people won't even give you a chance. So when I got in at the store, it was great. I have a great team that I work with, and it's good energy there. So, yeah.
And now, what about you, Candy? What do you do for work?
I'm an ed tech. I work in special ed behavioral at Marobi Elementary School. And when you've been in jail and have that record, it is hard to remember applying and having to go to the superintendent's office and explain why I had a misdemeanor. It should have been a felony, but it was a misdemeanor charge, and I had to explain
Been there.
explain, well, you know, I got an OUI, and then I broke my deferred deposition and got in an accident and had to go to jail, and but you know, this is why it's a misdemeanor. I had to plead guilty, but for her to look at me and just accept that and see that, I mean, she didn't know me before, but to be like, okay, you know, it was never a question after that. But I work with some people that knew me prior, and are just like, whoa. And then some who've never met me, and when they hear my backstory, you know, an addict, alcoholic, dealer, they're all like, what? Would have never expected. I use a lot of my coping mechanisms that I've used throughout these 5 years with my students. Mostly prayer.
Yeah.
You know, quietly praying over my students as we're in the hallway or in the classrooms or friends, coworkers.
I love that.
Yeah.
That must, challenge your recovery at times, but also your stuff you learn in recovery must be helpful for that job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's I see some people get so upset over situations and blame themselves, and I've learned that we're not in control of every situation, and that we're not to blame. I don't take anything personal when it comes to 5 years ago. I probably would have gone on my lunch break and done something that could have gotten me in trouble and fired.
I was going to say, could you even imagine doing that job while in active addiction?
No, because I did work a couple jobs while in active addiction, and the fact that I made it through those jobs without getting caught or thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, seriously.
Because life would have been although I might have been into recovery a lot quicker than I was. You know, it took me a long time.
I know. I kind of feel that the same way with it. Like I've worked for the school systems for 20 years now, and struggle with addiction and alcoholism through that whole time, whatever. But managed to always just kind of squeak by and kind of got away with a couple of things to an extent. Had to go in. I got the OUI, the deferred disposition. Went and superintendent was like, well, probably just don't drive with kids. And it was good, but it's like I was good enough at some of the things where some of the other stuff got overlooked. Good and bad. It let me slide along with my things that weren't terrible, but weren't good either for a long time. It took a while. It's like, hey, maybe if some of the stuff might have hit home a little harder. If not saying that I wanted to get in trouble for any of it, but definitely getting away with it sometimes makes you wonder. But I think, like, I find with working with kids now, and especially the kids that I used to struggle with, the kids that are a little bit more difficult, being in recovery makes that a heck of a lot easier to deal with because I understand a little bit more and a little bit more compassion and all that. Yeah. You must find that helps you a lot. And
yeah, it does. It's how to deal with things is a lot easier then, but I know that there's another way than to just
well, your knowledge.
Yeah, not
the knowledge
just
you have with what you're doing with Jesus and stuff. I have to say, like, the 12 step, God led me to the 12 steps.
Yeah.
Thankfully, because the 12 steps made me go back to God.
Yeah.
And I not to get too far into that, but I will say that some of the things that I was taught in the 12 steps programs on how to just live a better life, how to be kinder, how to just do the next right thing, being honest. I'm also learning by going to Bible study and going to church, and you're just finding that, you know, that patience, just understanding our humanism. Yeah. It's just, that's all it is. We're just human.
And thankful that God's grace is new every single day. And we're going to mess up. We're going to, you know, there's going to be days, you know, I'm just over 5 years, and I've had the temptation, you know, and like, I literally had it in my hands, and to hear the Lord say, really? I've delivered you. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
But it's because we have the power of choice. And every once in a while, I feel like I'm probably still going to be tested my whole entire life to see what I'm going to choose. And I'm going to choose every single time.
Now, I heard you talk about, like, you had to talk to your superintendent about some of your stuff. Now, Lauren, when you, with your job, like, have you talked about your recovery, or did you fill people in? How did that affect things?
Honestly, every job that I've had since I got out of prison, I haven't had to talk about it with them. And because they were just the first ones to hire me. Like, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts for a while. That was an easy place to get into. And then I worked at Camp Variety. That was just as easy to get into, and it just never came up. But I show up for work every day. I work hard while I'm there, and that's just it, you know. But going back to what you were saying too about like being held accountable, and maybe there should have been more kind of people looking at it. I think like with me, I know I was a mess when I was using and working, but I showed up to work every day. I was working overtime. I was there all the time, so of course nobody was going to say anything.
Yeah.
You know, I was that
They're
employee
like,
that was there.
you're here.
Right.
We don't care what you're doing. You showed up.
Exactly. So it just made me think of that anyway.
And
Yeah.
that's probably kind of some of the boat I fell into with what I did. I did a decent job at it, but nobody else really wanted to do it. So I think they're like, well, you're not perfect, but you're at
He's
least doing
present.
it.
Yeah.
There's a body here.
Which is sad in itself. But I was kind of asking that question more like, I mean, do you talk with people
Yeah,
you
like
work with, or is it something you just kind of
I'm-
keep to yourself?
I'm definitely, I wouldn't say I'm like super open about it. Like I won't just bring it up on my own, but if somebody asks about it, I don't lie. You know, I'm very honest about it, and like it was like a different, it's like a different life now. Looking back on it, I was like a whole different person, and my life has changed so much now that if they have a negative view about me because of what I was doing 6 years ago, then that's on them. Like my life has changed so much since then, and if they want to be petty about
I
you know,
agree.
it's,
Oh,
I don't have
absolutely.
the energy for it. You know, it's,
Well, I think that's what we were given a second chance, because I think we're here to make it so that we
Yeah.
can take that shame away.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
give that education, give that opportunity to tell people we do recover.
Yeah, and I'm not ashamed to say, like, I was in prison for 14 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I was on probation for 5 years after that, and I completed all that. And so, if anybody wants to have a negative view of me right off the bat from knowing that, then that's a shame on it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, because that was a
past is your
symptom.
past.
yeah.
'Cause I believe that all of that, having to go to jail, having those consequences, having those things happen, those were all symptoms of our addiction.
Absolutely, and if I wouldn't have been incarcerated for even that long, honestly, I don't think I'd be here today because I was like,
No, it
I was
needed
on
to
a really
happen.
bad road, and it needed to happen. And I'm not for like incarceration as a solution or for anything like that, but
Yeah.
it did save my life. And if I
Yeah.
would have just gotten like a weekend or 2 weeks or something like that, that wouldn't have been enough for me. I would have
I
gone
would-
right back to it.
I love that you're saying that, because, you know, recovery has so many faces, and you get there on so many different routes. And that definitely is an important one for a lot of people.
And I know when I say, yeah, I was in prison for 14 months, people look at me and think, really, you were in prison? Like, you sold drugs? Like, I know I don't look like that kind of person. And I'm not the stereotypical person, and not to even put a label on it, but it's just kind of a surprise most of the time. But it's like, look at me now.
We say a lot in the 12-step programs, God does for you what you can't do for yourself. And sometimes that's what it is. It'll pluck
absolutely.
you out and put you somewhere where you need to be to get safe and get in recovery.
Yeah, for sure.
But swinging back to work for a second, so like since I mean I have nowhere near the time and either one of you do, but I mean it doesn't really
We're the newbies.
matter. It's each day for itself is what everybody keeps telling me and stuff. So you
That's
go with
the
that.
truth.
But I've been like super open with everybody, like when it comes to work and everywhere else in recovery, and I find so much positivity comes from that. Like everywhere I've been to a couple of different places since I've been in recovery, and it's like talking about that stuff. It seems to almost bring people together. It makes them curious. It brings up some interesting dialogue or whatever. I don't know my words very well sometimes, but it's been really good. It helps deal with some of the problems that arise at work.
It removes the stigma.
It definitely does that, but it's like it brings kind of, when people know you're working on like being more patient, being calm, being better with people, it makes them want to work on that too. Even if that's not their first nature, then when they're around you, if that's not the most natural thing they do, it makes them work on it. Now with work though, what I ran into, and I don't know if either of you run into, like when I had first got clean, I like stimulants, and I had opportunity to go in and do like shift work. It would have been a really good job. I was really looking forward to it, or kind of looking forward to it. Looking forward to the money and benefits and stuff like that. But I was like 3 weeks clean, and I decided to turn it down because I knew like the first time doing like night shifts and stuff, what I'm going to want to do. I've only been 3 weeks away from doing that yet, and I'm like, I don't sleep for a couple of nights. So I didn't go there now. And talking to some of these people in programs, like they talk about with work and like taking it slow with work. Like don't like rush over your head. For the first year, it should be kind of jobs that are good for you. Sometimes almost like a mindless job, something you do, somewhat easy, not overly stressful that you can leave at work. How do you guys feel about that? You've had experience, you've been through it, you've had jobs. I mean, what would you tell somebody new, like when it comes to work?
I don't know, because I dove right in. Like,
You were just like,
the same
wait.
thing.
See, I dove right into recovery, so that instead of like the work aspect. But so you guys used, and I think everybody's different.
I feel like with work, it can be a very fine line between like working hard and wanting to live a positive life and a cross addiction. Like, because I know there were times where like I was working 50, 60 hours a week, but I didn't need to be. But I liked working that much, and it was like I was almost kind of addicted to work in a sense, in like a weird way. Like,
Is this when you were in recovery?
Yes, I was like,
well,
fresh
it's
out of
staying
jail,
busy.
like,
Idle
I need to
hands,
stay
right?
busy, and, but that can become toxic too. You gotta find a fine balance.
You do.
there.
Balance is the key word. Balance.
I like that. I like you brought that up because I had a lot of friends. I had one buddy in particular did the rehab thing, and like they want him to write, they want him to talk, they want to do all that, and he's like, I just want to like work. I want to do something with my hands. And like as soon as he was back out, it's just like getting back busy in the shop and 80 hours a week doing stuff and keeping the hands. It's like, did you do? I mean, yes, that works, and
For some
might
people,
not be doing
but it
what you
catches
were
up to them.
doing, but does
absolutely.
it fix stuff? And so I mean, I like that you brought that up. Like, I think balance is a huge part. Now,
and working on
type
yourself.
of jobs. How important is the type of job you go into recovery?
I think the people you work with is more important than the type of job, for me anyway. Like, because I worked at Irving for like 2 weeks, and I hated it. It was like, the shift work, I was in my head the whole time, like, by myself in a corner. It's like, I just want to talk to people. And like, so when I went back to working in food, I have a really good crew of people, and it's positive, but I've also worked other places where your coworkers can be terrible to work with, and it can be easy to fall back on the old habits of using at work.
Environment's
and
key.
work. Yeah, your environment's key. I think, yes, it's important that your job isn't too stressful, but I think your surroundings and the people you're with 90% of the time is almost more important.
Yeah. I know for me, like, I love the job that I'm doing now. And I was probably like 6 months sober, 7 months sober when I got the job that I'm in now. And I think that made a huge difference. I don't think I could have gone into the mill and done shift work brand new in recovery.
Yeah.
I actually overdosed at work. I was a server at the Bethel Inn, and I overdosed at work, and went back to that job and stayed in that job while in recovery until I got this job at the mill. And my mindset was, I was focused. I was doing 12-step programs. I had a sponsor. I was, it wasn't the environment that made me use. I used because I was up all night drinking by myself, and somebody offered me a stimulant, and I said yes, because I was falling. I couldn't stay awake. So, but going into the job that I have now, in the shift work and stuff, I am very open about being in recovery there. And that has led me to some really cool conversations with coworkers. That, one, they might be questioning whether or not they're in active addiction. I've had coworkers come to me for help, looking for help, because I've been so open about being in recovery. I've had coworkers tell me about their time in sobriety, that they've been sober before or they are still sober. And we get to have done the 12-step programs, and I get to have all these really cool conversations with them and learn so much about them, and I'm so open about it. And there's people that have no experience with loved ones in addiction or being in addiction themselves, and they have a lot of questions for me, and I'm able to answer a lot of things. It's been really cool to be so transparent. I really feel like because of that, and I'm getting more involved with the union. I have things that I'd like to do for my, for the people that I work with, just to give them a resource, somebody to call if they're struggling, or maybe they think themselves they need help or whatever, because we have the resources. Our community does have them. You just need to know where to look. So it's nice to be open and loud about my recovery, because I've had a lot of people reach out because of that.
Yeah, and with work and stuff, like, how much being in recovery, how has that affected your work, like you as a worker and stuff? Like, have you become a better employee? Do you like your jobs better?
I didn't think I was really a bad employee before. I was always showed up and did my job well. Yes, I was on stimulants to do my, to get everything done that needed to be. But now it's, I love helping people. So I feel such reward in the job that I do, working with kids that struggle every single day with staying on task, or behaviors, controlling their bodies, controlling their words, their minds. Just to be there as that person that can relate. Like, I felt like I was out of control for so long. And now, I'm still not in control. Never being in control. That's all God. But to be able to be there with a calm mind and to support these kids in ways that I would have never been able to do before. Feels really good. Feels really good to, there's kids that I don't even work with that will walk by me and be like, Miss Candy, because I'm always smiling. I'm always wanting to help somebody. So that's been wonderful to be able to be part of that, to be able to be there for these kids. And for some staff that I've had, staff that have family members that are addiction and have reached out to me like, what, for prayer, for what. I put the cover on.
I like what you brought up there, talking about how, like, you were always, like, felt like a pretty good employee. I kind of feel like that. I mean, there's times when I was better than others, don't get me wrong, but I was always a decent employee. The biggest thing about it, though, is, like, being an employee in recovery. I probably, in some aspects, especially when I was on stimulants, like, got more work done, was a better physical worker that way. But I'm so much better of a co-worker. I care what other people think.
That's
I'm better
such a
to
good
work.
way to put that.
I'm better to work with like my boss and stuff, because I care more about it. I'm less selfish now. Before, it's like, as an employee, even if I was doing well, I made it all about me, or tried to. And that ruined some decent situations, or made it difficult. Where now, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have my moments where I struggle with work and, like, purpose and all that stuff, but I'm much better about thinking about everybody else around in the big picture. That's what recovery brought me to work. And then, like, to me, one of the biggest things for me in work when hitting recovery was finding something with purpose. For so long, I was just thinking about money and a title. Like, and I never really cared about titles, but I did. It's like, oh, I don't really want it. And I didn't really want to be the center of attention or the spotlight or have that title, but I did want to have it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it was.
Here we want it.
And money, and money was even more important than title, and it still gives me sometimes. It's like you sit there, and I worry now more about financial stability than I am so much that. But let's face it, like, what you get paid puts a value on what you're worth, and it's like sometimes remembering that that's not my value, but just kind of that there, and going. But that used to be such a huge concern. It's like, this job sucks, but I make this much, and be like, well, I make this much money, or blah blah blah.
And it's work to maintain active addiction while at work. Like,
oh my gosh.
Just not wanting to go to work unless I knew I was going to have something either brought to me while I was at work or with me at work, because I know I'm going to be sick halfway through this shift. So I got to figure it out. And it's just, my mind was never there. Yes, I'm completing the task, but I'm somewhere else the whole time.
I look back on the fact that I actively used while at work, and I had a very serious job, and it just blows my mind, the things that, you will do while you're in active addiction. And, I was in my eyes, at the end, I was not a good employee. I slept through my alarms, and I was the only person in that department. So on the weekends, if I didn't show up, nobody did. And at the hospital, that's noticeable. And it was not good. It was not good. And but now I do shift work, and I was worried about going into shift work, but it's so much easier for me now that I'm not using. I can't.
You talk about, bringing to, at one point when I was, dealing as well, I worked in the nursing home, and I would stay up half the night and wake up and, do a line, go to work, and I brought my little vial with me, and, I did my job, and I did other people's jobs because, and then you're behind closed doors, and you have residents who are incoherent, so they don't know what you're doing, or you're in the bathroom getting their water ready to do their care, and and I know. And there's always that one coworker that would join in with you that,
there's
watch the door, so now to be able to wake up every morning, and the one thing that I need every morning is Jesus. I need to go to prayer before, so I can get through the day. I've had people ask me at work, like, how do you do this? Like, Jesus, if I don't pray before I go to work, I'm not going to make it through the day without feeling a little bit like...
We've learned in the 12-step programs, you definitely got to have that, balance. You definitely got to... I do that. Mind, body, soul. That's my medicine. Yep. I have, in recovery, I still have, in active addiction, I was self-medicating with booze and drugs. Today, I self-medicate with doing stuff like this and prayer, going to meetings, talking to another person in recovery. That's what keeps me sober.
All right, so we're kind of getting ready to run out of time here,
but
I want to point out or talk about one more thing really quickly. One of the things I found with work and recovery is it's amazing once you're in recovery how quickly everything else falls in place. Or work, people that didn't trust you at work before, or that might be this or that, once you're in it, it seemed like that changes very quick. Once they see you making those changes, how quickly, am I the only one, or is everybody else?
I will say, being in recovery in my, in my job, being open about it has, one, held me accountable. So now it's like, I've pointed out the fact that I'm an addict. So now I feel like they have a lot more respect for me.
Yep.
And just being, being vulnerable, having the courage to be vulnerable. A lot of people don't do that. And I think it makes them feel comfortable.
Oh, I think absolutely, and just seeing the change you made. But is that something that you guys found also?
Yeah, I think being in recovery now, working, it's good to be honest with people, and like I was saying before, I'm not super out with it, but I don't ever lie about it. And
that takes courage.
I also don't do sketchy stuff. I don't give people a reason to
You're not in the bathroom every 15 minutes.
Exactly. I'm not doing weird addict stuff.
That we thought looked normal.
That I think, back then, it was totally normal for me to go in the bathroom every 15 minutes and be coming out sweaty and not knowing what's going on. But
and just make up every excuse in the book. I'm not feeling good, blah, blah, blah.
And now you're noticing
I don't disappear.
Other people, you can spot it,
I don't disappear.
I'm not judging you,
Where
but
did
I want to
Kayleigh
help
go?
you.
How come she's not being, picking up on her pager? And
why is she sweaty and cold at the same time?
It was so big.
It is so true. Well, thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Onyx.
Onyx.
Thanks for stealing the show.
I know.
You're a handsome little dude.
You are such a handsome little dude.